What is your leadership style? Welcome to part 2 in a 4-part series on leadership styles that mirror parenting styles. Hi, I'm Michael Ceely. I'm an executive and leadership coach, and we're going to be talking about leadership styles. Again, this is the second in a 4-part series on leadership styles that are very similar to parenting styles. So the reason I made this video is my background is in psychotherapy and counseling. And having studied leadership in families, it is very, very similar to leadership in teams, in corporate, and in business. But let's talk about the 4 leadership styles. And a little refresher on my previous video, there's a link in the description below on the first style leadership that I talked about, which is authoritarian leadership, which is pretty self-explanatory. But this video is about authoritative leadership style. And it sometimes gets confused that authoritative and authoritarian often get confused. But really quickly, the 4 leadership styles are authoritarian, authoritative, uninvolved, and permissive. So these are the styles. So today I'm going to focus on authoritative leadership style. So a good way to illustrate the difference between authoritarian and authoritative is to talk about parenting. If you think about an authoritarian parent, there's a lot of punishment involved. There's much more of a withholding of warmth, sort of a cutting off of the relationship if the child misbehaves or does something that the parent doesn't want. Now, there's merits to being very firm as a parent, but there's that line where you can kind of damage the relationship if you're too authoritarian with your kid. Similarly, in leadership with adults, the same really dynamics apply because it is relationships. Now, obviously, your team is not your kids, right? You don't want to infantilize them, treat them like kids. But it's a similar dynamic is that if you are more open to having your team give you feedback or allow your team more autonomy in their decision making, and even allow them to an extent to make some smaller mistakes, allow them to auto-correct as opposed to you hovering and micromanaging, right? Similarly in parenting, if you allow your kid to maybe make mistakes and self-correct, but you're always there as a parent, as the authoritative parent, providing that scaffolding, if you will. So that's really the subtle difference, is being there as an authoritative leader, being there as sort of guardrails, as the sort of the director in the background on the movie set, if you will, that's going to be calling the shots, is always there on the ready, but they're not hovering, they're not micromanaging, they're allowing the actors, if you will, in the scene to maybe improvise a little bit, maybe make some errors, and they're not rushing in to correct things. So how do you spot the authoritative leader? This is for yourself as a leader. These are some of the characteristics that you might have as an authoritative leader, or how to spot the authoritative leader if you work for a boss. And here they are. Number 1 is relational rapport. You as a leader have enough emotional intelligence to not sour a relationship, not be overly punitive or take things personally or get really angry if someone makes a mistake. You want to maintain that level of warmth in the relationship. Next characteristic is feedback, how you give feedback. So an authoritarian typically only gives criticism and feedback that way. The authoritative leader gives a mix of criticism and praise because the authoritative leader knows what motivates people. If you criticize them all the time, it's demotivating. Even if you're correct, it's still demotivating. So you want to provide that mix of praise, not fake praise, but give a compliment from time to time. Point out things that they're doing right. Say thank you more often. And if needed, provide criticism, right? And provide it in a way that is constructive. The next characteristic for the authoritative leader is how you manage autonomy on your team. So you have a mix of guidance and autonomy, whereas the authoritarian is much more my way or the highway, coming in, here's the way it goes. You want to, as the authoritative leader, allow a certain amount of autonomy on your team. Allow people even to make mistakes, small ones, hopefully, but basically allow them to be self-starting, self-motivating, self-regulating, but always sort of keeping a watch how things are going. Next, the authoritative leader sets standards, sets a minimum standard of performance and behavior, and also talks about maybe a higher end of performance. But again, allows that team to self-regulate. You want to be providing some outside guidance, but not too much, right? Because if you're always pumping people up and motivating them, they're not really performing at their natural best. So you don't want to be a cheerleader. So you want to be setting sort of the bookends of those performance standards. So KPIs, right? What are your minimum expectations and what is the upper end of your expectations? And that shows your team, here's where everyone should be performing in this range. And finally, the last characteristic of the authoritative leader is that you are ultimately in charge. You are the executive in charge. You're going to make a decision, even if all the feedback from your talented team is saying, we really think this is the best way to do it. They all know that you're ultimately in charge, that you're going to make the final decision. So similar to parenting, the parent always has the last word. The parent always says, hey, this is the way we're going to do it. And what that really does for the team is it provides something called psychological safety. They know that you're in charge. They know that if their idea is shot down, it's okay, you're in charge, you're going to be finally making those decisions. And it provides people a level of comfort knowing that someone's in charge, that there is a hierarchy and there's not chaos, and that maybe a coworker is not going to try to take over, that basically you're the leader and that you're in charge. Okay, that wraps up this video on authoritative leadership. And I think comparing it to parenting styles can be really helpful because it kind of makes it a little more cut and dry of how leadership works. And again, adults in corporate or in business, they're different from children, but there's still that same dynamic, is that you as a leader are the role model, that you're in charge, that you allow autonomy, that you trust them, all of these things. It's a delicate balance, but hopefully this video helped you to illustrate these important points. So the next video in this series is about uninvolved leaders. Okay, it's almost self-explanatory, but it's similar to parenting. I'm going to give some examples of that. And then the final video in the series is about permissive leaders. So there's links in the description below to all of these videos, a 4-part series, and hopefully it gets you thinking about leadership in a more basic way so you can see these characteristics and choose the ones that work best for you.